Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Bert Not Ernie Show podcast. Today, we're going to be looking at a passage from the New Testament in the book of Matthew, chapter 14, to be exact. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. You're listening to the Bert Not Ernie Show, playing now on the Edify app and on iHeartRadio. This is episode number 209. Matthew chapter 14 opens with the death of John the Baptist, which I'm just going to be blunt in how I say this. The way that John the Baptist died was murdered. He didn't just like die in his sleep. He was murdered. I'm going to call it what it is. The way that that came about, it was a really messed up event. The whole thing was just really messed up. It's just got like a icky, disgusting feel to it. You read it and it's just really disturbing the way that his death came about, his murder. He was executed, he was beheaded, and it came about in a way that's just kind of gross, right? It just is what it is. It cannot be prettied up because it's just too raw and too ugly for that. And that's one of the things about the Bible that is good to keep in mind. It doesn't pretty things up. It doesn't make it something it's not. It doesn't pretend. It is what it is. And that's how chapter 14 begins. Now, the reason I mention that is because as we get to the key focus of this episode, which will be toward the end of chapter 14, where Peter walks on the water, I want you to remember that this chapter transpires in one day. This is a sequence of events. It's not days apart or weeks apart. It's a sequence of events that happened starting when they got the news of John the Baptist's death and then ending with Peter walking on the water. Okay, so it was a very long, very full day that began with a very emotional, heartbreaking, grief inducing event. In the New Living Translation, verse 13 reads, "As soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone." So Jesus, the Son of Man, fully God and fully man, this is how he reacted when he heard that John the Baptist had been killed. He wanted to go somewhere remote, private, and be alone. He felt the pain and he felt the grief of it. He felt the weight of it. He didn't push it aside. He didn't. He didn't uh, wait until a more opportune time to deal with his grief. He didn't put it in a box. He felt it and he wanted to go somewhere remote in order to be alone. I don't know if this brings you any kind of comfort, but I hope that it does. This understanding that Jesus sat in his grief, he sat in it as much as he was able to. And what I mean by that is, he was living in a world that literally chased after him continually. So, as much as he was able to sit in his grief in the actual moment and feel it and mourn in a way that obviously is a godly way of mourning, this is how Jesus did it. So, this is the godly way to mourn. He felt it in the moment as much as he could. That's why he wanted to get away and be alone, right? He didn't want to put this off for another day. Now, I don't know if that's comforting to you, but I don't know if maybe you need permission to sit in your grief right now, whatever your grief might be. I don't know if you are one of the many myriad of people who feels almost guilty for wanting to step back and step away to a more remote place, whether that's figuratively or literally, and just be alone. Have you ever felt guilty for just wanting to be alone a little bit, to step back and to take pause? I want you to see that Jesus did that and you don't have to feel guilty for that. And if the version of stepping away to a more remote place means getting off of your phone and social media for a season, I think that could be really, really good as you process your grief. Maybe you've even been told that you're spending too much time alone, that this version of grieving is not okay, that it's not healthy, that it's unsafe, that it's unwise, that you should be grieving and processing in community and basically only in community. Maybe some of your journey through grief should be in some type of community. I mean, maybe there are people who are grieving or have already grieved or walked through some of the early raw stages that you might be feeling. Maybe they're a little further down the road, and maybe there's like a podcast, a book, a support group that is focused on kind of exactly specifically what you're grieving. There could be lots of different kinds of things that you could be grieving, and there are different stages of life. You know what I'm saying? If you are a young widower, perhaps you need to find other people who can relate, because this other grief support option here for people who are married 50 or more years is not exactly what you need. If you are facing a health crisis, you don't need to be in the support group that's full of people who are dealing with job loss. That's not the same thing, right? So, yes, some of your grieving and processing, it probably should happen in community. That's not wrong. But as I read that this text from Matthew 14, I am certain that Jesus, here's what I know for certain: Jesus sees you in the place where you are right now, and he is totally okay with you stepping back and retreating to some sort of remoteness, to be alone for a time, whatever that remote season looks like for you. Look, we have no, in air quotes here, remote part of our lives. If we're posting all the time, if we're inviting anyone and everyone right into our lives in every season, and we could do that so easily with social media, like they're right here in the midst of all of it, and we're never living remotely. We can feel guilty about hitting pause because we're so used to just being immersed in constant connection, even though a lot of that connection is not real connection. So, like, if you need to step away when you hear terrible news, you're in good company. You're in company with Jesus himself. And most likely, you're actually going to be able to succeed at getting at least a little bit of time alone. Jesus did not really get time alone because the crowds heard where he was headed and they followed on foot from many surrounding towns. That's the remainder of verse 13 of Matthew 14. And then verse 14 says that Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat. So they get to the remote place. He sees the huge crowd as he steps from the boat. And what does it say? It says he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. Okay, so if Jesus, in his own grief, on his way to someplace remote in order to be alone, saw this huge crowd of people and he had compassion on them, I want you to grab hold of the hope in this verse here and know that he sees you and he has so much compassion for you. He is the same yesterday and today and forever. And you can depend fully on him to have the compassion on you that you need at the exact moment that you need it. And it's an empathetic kind of compassion because he actually was a man in the flesh and experienced real grief. These people that traveled from their towns to where they figured out where he was going, like they figured it out, that's what the verse says, and they went where he was going, they traveled there. He didn't take that and set it aside. He didn't say, well, this isn't the time. I came here for this and now you found me. You got to wait. No, he didn't do that. He didn't set them aside, and you will not be set aside when you come to him. We have a lot of hope for us in this passage of Matthew 14. Now, Jesus, he was in a remote place because that's where he was headed earlier in the day, right? So this text goes on to say he was in the remote place because he went to the remote place, right? So now the disciples, later that evening, they come to him and they said, this is a remote place. Yeah, I'm thinking that he knew it was a remote place because he's the one that chose it as his destination when he was going away to a remote place to be alone. And they're saying this is a remote place. It's all coming to a head for them here, right? Because you've got all these people that figured it out and followed him and ended up there, but now they're all here. They're all gathered together. They've been healed and they're likely listening to Jesus's teaching, and they're having this monumental, life-changing experience, but they are in a remote place. And the disciples did not have a way to feed all of these people. So they wanted Jesus to send them away from the remote place so they could get food before it got much later, because this was late in the day at this point. And Jesus told his disciples to feed the people. And this is the time when they had 5 loaves of bread and the loaves and the fishes. You probably know this story. Maybe you even learned about it on the old school flannel graph back in the olden days, right? Jesus took the loaves and the fish, or the fishes, as it used to be said, the loaves and the fishes, and he blessed them. And he started breaking the bread into pieces so that the disciples could hand it out to the people. Everyone ate as much as they wanted, and the leftovers were about 12 baskets full. And 5,000 men plus women and children were fed that day. It's a huge miracle, on top of what must have been a tremendous amount of miracles as Jesus healed all of their sick. And he did all of this while he has not yet gotten alone to a remote place as he is grieving the death of John the Baptist and wants to be alone and wants to probably spend time in prayer to his Father. So you have the setup for what comes next, right? Think about everything that transpired this day. We've got the setup. And now we're going to move into what is the specific focus of this episode of the podcast. John the Baptist was killed. It was horrible. Jesus went away to be alone with the grief. Huge crowds figured out where he was going and followed him there. He had compassion on them and healed their sick. Then the disciples wanted Jesus to send the people away to get food, but he miraculously fed them with the loaves and the fishes. Let's pick it up in verse 22 of Matthew chapter 14, and I am reading from the New Living Translation today. Immediately after this, there's no pause here, there's no break. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. Jesus insisted, and the disciples did what he told them to do. That's called obedience, my friend, and it ought to be the mark of a disciple in 2025 just as much as it was the mark of a disciple who followed Jesus 2,000 years ago. Obedience matters. And sometimes we forget that in the here and now, when we're living in what's currently known as the age of grace. We forget how much obedience matters because we have so much grace. We're swimming in grace. We're almost drowning in God's grace. And we forget that obedience matters. Prompt obedience matters. Have we considered that we might be abusing God's grace by excusing away our lack of obedience? Being a grace abuser, that's not a good thing. It doesn't earn us a merit badge. It's actually a really negative thing. So try not to forget to obey the Lord. And please do remember that delayed obedience is actually just disobedience, plain and simple, no way around it. Had the disciples delayed in obeying the Lord when he told them to get in the boat and go back across the lake, had they disobeyed, and had they delayed in obeying him, the next verses in this chapter would have played out differently. Our obedience actually matters. There's always a bigger picture. It's God's story, and we're just really in it, right? Our story is very small compared to the overarching complete story that God is writing. We don't want to miss a moment. When we know he said to do this, we don't want to miss the moment by putting it off, disobeying altogether. Delayed obedience really is just disobedience. It's plain and simple. And we don't want to get things, we don't want to get tangled up in that. Let me just put it that way. Grace abuse is common. I would love for it to be a lot less common, starting with me. May we always have hearts and minds and feet and hands that are quick to obey Jesus. What a difference. What a difference in our lives and in the lives of those around us that would make, just to be quick to obey Jesus. And Jesus himself sent the people home, it tells us here. He sent them home. That's another good word for us today. When he says to go on home now, we need to heed him. Sometimes heading home to get some rest, to be with our family, our loved ones, sometimes that's what he tells us to do. We tend to lean toward the workaholic mentality, right? Like the workaholic is the hero in American culture. But was that Jesus's heart? If that's not his heart, then that's not the Jesus way. Even if our culture applauds workaholics, lauding them as modern day heroes, let's just bear this in mind. We are never the hero in our own story, and we're really never the hero in anybody else's story. Jesus is the sole hero of all time. So set aside the workaholic ways, and when Jesus sends you home, just go on home. Okay, verse 23 of Matthew chapter 14. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. So he went up in the hills to pray alone. He did what he first set out to do when he left to go to that remote area to be alone. Now he got it done. Sometimes well-meaning people, family, friends, Bible study group members, your pastor, and so on, at times they're going to tell you that heading off to be alone, even if it's not for grief, even if it's just like to have like maybe a personal prayer retreat, a time alone with the Lord. Sometimes these well-meaning people, they may infer that heading off to be alone is not God's will for you. It's really, 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 really easy to grab one verse from the Bible and use it to make this point. In Hebrews, for example, it says not to forsake the gathering together of the saints. And that verse could be grabbed hold of and utilized to persuade someone from not taking some time to be alone. And also, I want to add that, of course, we are never alone when we know the Lord because He's always with us. So that's incredibly comforting. Even when you feel alone, you're never alone. Remember that too. But, let this verse from Matthew 14 be a reminder to you that God always accomplishes what He sets out to accomplish. If He aims at getting something done, He doesn't miss the mark. What He aims for is what He hits every single time. He doesn't start something and then, oh, God's unable to finish it. He never has the inability to finish what He starts because He has no inabilities. And so every single thing He begins is every single thing that you can count on Him to complete. He brings it to completion. What's this have to do with you? Well, what has He promised you? What's He promised you? That's what He's going to finish. Your job is to believe Him, to do the work of believing. Sometimes that act of choosing to believe, even when it flies in the face of all evidence and all logic, sometimes that's harder to do than getting our hands dirty and trying to work something out by our own strength. But when you hold on tightly to your belief, like you grab hold of it and you're not going to let go of it, you're simultaneously holding on to hope, and hope is valuable. It's like better than gold. It's good currency. It is. Hope is precious. And I say it's good currency because hope is contagious and we can spread it around. The enemy tries to snatch it away from you because he knows its worth. Satan knows how valuable hope is, probably better than we do. But if God has got hope for you, then it's yours for the having. Let me say that again. If God has hope for you, then it is yours for the having. Hold on to your belief, and then you're going to kind of hang on to your hope at the same time. Do that today. Hold on to your belief and hope today. Just even if today is the only day you feel like you can do that, you can't hold on for tomorrow, then start today, and then tomorrow do it again. But for right now, hold on to your hope and your belief. Okay, Jesus went up into the hills by Himself to pray. When you have the time and the opportunity to get away by yourself to pray, I hope that you take it. It doesn't happen often enough in our lives, and we feel weird about taking that time, but it is never time wasted, so we should stop feeling weird about it. It's an investment, and it's one that will pay dividends throughout all eternity, not just for the here and now. Jesus got alone to pray. We also need to get alone to pray, period. No excuses, no exceptions. This is a need. This isn't I can take it or leave it, optional Christian practice. You and we need to pray. You need to have times when you're by yourself, when there's nobody else with you. There's no phone with you. It's just you and the Lord, and you spend that time in prayer. I'll say it again. It's a need. This isn't optional. This is necessary. It's critical. It's like oxygen. Take time to get alone and pray. Night fell while He was there up in the hills by Himself praying. It got dark. The disciples, they're out on the lake in the boat. They're far from land because they've been caught fighting heavy waves and a strong wind, is what it says. So they're still rowing. They're working. And remember how the day began. Like they've got to be exhausted emotionally and physically by this point. So they're out there. They're stuck on the lake in a boat in a storm, and Jesus came out to them walking on the water. That's verse 25. It was the middle of the night. They'd been at it for a long time after this incredibly long day. Think about how heavy and exhausting grief can be. They had had a day. And now they were fighting impossible weather. They were afraid when they saw Jesus walking on the water. It says they thought He was a ghost. But once Jesus told them not to be afraid, to take courage because He was there, which is a really good word for all of us pretty much every single day, isn't it? Like, is there any circumstance when you don't want to know that Jesus is there and you don't need to be afraid? I will personally take that all day long, no matter what comes my way. So once Jesus told them not to be afraid, but to take courage, then Peter called out to Him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. Yes, come, Jesus said. That's verses 28 and 29. So Peter went over the side of the boat and he walked on the water towards Jesus. His response to Jesus being there was a very bold request and a bold action in response to Jesus saying yes. He went over the side of the boat and he walked on the water toward Jesus. The storm is still raging at this point. It says that when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and he began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Verse 31, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" And finally, verse 32, when they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. All right, so anybody else shocked even a little bit that Jesus in no way commended Peter for having the faith to ask for such a bold thing, something that had literally never been done by a human being, to walk on the water, to come out and walk with Jesus? Like, he asked Jesus for that. And Jesus does not say, "Good job. That was a great prayer. I'm glad you asked. You had great faith in asking and you believed for it and you actually accomplished it. You believe that I would enable you to do that." Peter initiated this whole thing with his request. Jesus was good with it. He said yes. Peter climbed over the side of the boat and he actually walked on the water. None of that is mentioned by Jesus in any kind of like a positive, affirmative light. Instead, Jesus rebukes Peter. Isn't that interesting? Such a powerful reminder that our metrics are not his metrics, and what we look at may well be the thing that he is not looking at. Peter did what no other person has ever done. He walked on top of water solely by faith, that if he asked and Jesus said yes, it would be possible. And then he immediately responded with action. He did not doubt. That's obvious. In that moment, he didn't doubt. He went over the side of the boat, walked on the water. In that moment, he wasn't doubting. Yet Jesus said that Peter had, and I'm quoting, "so little faith." Asking for the impossible, believing for it, and doing it was not enough to negate his problem of so little faith when he became terrified and started sinking because he saw and experienced outside the boat the strong wind and waves. The same strong wind and waves that he'd been dealing with inside the boat. This is nothing new to a seasoned fisherman, but seeing them in that new way and experiencing them, focusing on them, that undid Peter. Where do you and I tend to like start well? Where have we started well? With huge faith. It's immovable, fully all in, believing the Lord. We see the Lord moving in might. He's doing the impossible. And then we take another look and we see things from our new perch, our different vantage, a new angle, and we just lose heart all of a sudden. Where have I done that? Where have you done that? And do we give ourselves a pass because of the faith that we had in the beginning? Or do we look at things the way Jesus did in this situation with Peter from Matthew 14? And regarding Peter looking at the wind and waves, Jesus said that there was actually doubt in Peter. This is not recorded as Peter was just facing the facts. Peter just saw things as they were, and so on. Those are the kinds of things that we so often hear in the world, and even in Christian circles. Like, it's just facing reality. This is what it is. You're seeing things clearly as they are. Jesus gave Peter no quarter to reality in this passage. He simply called it doubt, and specifically, he called it doubt in him. Looking at the wind and waves, that's doubting the Lord. So says Jesus in Matthew 14. If you're looking at the wind and the waves, that is doubting the Lord. Isn't this a bit of a tough pill to swallow if we're honest? Like, I don't want to doubt the Lord. I don't want the reality of life to be linked to my doubting the Lord, who is the Lord of all. He's the Lord of everything. I don't want to look at things that are reality. They're real. They're actually happening, and have that be doubting the Lord. I don't want that to be what it is to look at the facts and examine them. But I don't always evaluate myself rightly. And I hope that this passage helps me to do a reset in this area, to look at things through the Lord's eyes, seeking his perspective, and not only facing reality and facing the facts and seeing things as they are and not living with my head in the clouds. Because sometimes, maybe oftentimes, too much of a focus on reality is like a slap in the face to the Lord when it causes us to doubt him. All right, this episode is going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up because last week's episode was much longer than usual. And so I'm going to keep this one at probably about 25 minutes. But so I kind of apologize for last week's longer episode, but not really, because time spent in God's word, it's never time spent amiss. So, but I'm going to end this episode with this prayer. Let me pray for you now and for myself as well. Lord, give us true faith in you. Remove our doubts. Even when the reality of life is pressing on us, help us to agree with you that our doubts and even our fears are often really just doubt in you. That we're doubting that you're going to take care of us, that we're doubting how things can possibly turn around. What can you possibly do in this situation? That we're doubting that you are and will be Lord over everything concerning us. May that be far from us. May we be a people of faith, specifically of faith in you in any and every situation and circumstance. May you examine our hearts and drive doubt far from us so that we just have faith and trust. May we not sink into our circumstances due to doubt, but keep our eyes fixed on you, trusting you and maintaining the kind of faith that moves mountains and gives us feet to tread upon our circumstances. In your name, I pray this. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Thanks so much for listening today. As always, I'm so thankful that you've taken the time to listen to the Bert Not Ernie Show, and feel free to share prayer requests via the link in the show notes. I do pray more than once, multiple times for every request that I receive. I often follow up to see how things are going and how I can continue to pray most effectively over your needs. And I will also say that every prayer need is strictly confidential. I'm the only one that ever sees them, prays over them. So I just wanted to throw that out there. They're not shared with anybody. My Jot form to submit prayer requests should be right at the tippy top of the show notes. So seriously, take advantage of that if I can pray for you anyway. Lord bless you, and I'll be back next time. Bye-bye.